transforming musical linguistic objects.
Greetings from Cyberdelic Space. This is Lorenzo, and I'm your host here in the Psychedelic Salon. Well, it really is good to be back here with you in the salon again. Seems like I've been gone for more than 3 weeks. So how are you doing today? Well, I hope that you're doing as well as I am right now, because until I was on the road for a few days, I didn't really realize how much I needed a break. But now I'm finding it kind of hard to get back into a routine of any kind. So I had a great time. As you know, I recently attended the 23rd and final gathering of the Oracle at Dragon Sphere Park in Washington. And after that, my wife and some friends of ours and I spent some time on a lovely little island in the San Juans, where I stayed with my dear friends Kevin and Kadoma. And I want to send my thanks for their love, kindness, and that of their friends who also joined us in an evening of food that came fresh from their gardens and a night of song around a fire that not only brought me back to life, but completely reinvigorated my soul. And so I send my love and warmest regards to Michael, Nina, and all of the staff and volunteers at the Oracle Gathering, and to Kevin, Kadoma, and all of you magical beings on my favorite island. You have done me a great service, and Kevin, I promise to keep on keeping on, as you so kindly requested. In fact, I'm now thinking of this 5th year in the Psychedelic Salon as dedicated to all of you wonderful people in the Pacific Northwest. Thanks for being such incredible people, and for all you are doing to make life on our little spaceship Earth more joyous for everybody. And I look forward with great anticipation to the next time that we're all together again. Now, there are also some other truly incredible people who also deserve my thanks. And I have to tell you that when I returned home a few days ago and checked my email, I was actually stunned at the number of donations that came in during a time when I wasn't even producing any podcasts. I have to tell you guys that, well, you brought tears to my eyes when I learned of your generous donations to the salon. And these kind and generous souls include longtime friend of the salon and previous donor, Max T. Thanks again for everything, Max. And Max was joined by Caroline F., Eric D., Tony S., Toby O., Anthony D., Lori W., and Andy H. Gosh, I really wish I could come up with a better way to thank all of you for your more than generous donations. All I can say is that, well, you've touched me very deeply. And as I promised Kevin, for sure you have another year of salon coming your way. In fact, I'm even going to try to make up for the weeks I've missed by producing a few extra programs to be sure that we get a full 52 podcasts in by our 5-year anniversary next year. And I might also mention that several of today's donors have also been with us and supporting the salon in various ways for almost all of that time. And I'm here to tell you that it sure does feel good to get back with all of you once again here in the salon. It's the thing that's pulling me through sometimes. And so, like you, it just feels good for us all to get together once in a while. And we'll make it at least once a week for the next 12 months or so. Now, there is one last thank you that I want to send along right now, and then I promise to get on with the show. But I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of our fellow saloners who attended the Oracle Gathering. I got to meet quite a few of you, but after looking at some of the emails I received before the gathering, I see that there were at least 2 of you that I missed connecting with, and I'm really sorry about that, because one of my main reasons for going was to connect with all of you. And if you were there and we missed connecting, well, I'm really sorry about that, and hopefully our paths in the default world will cross again sometime, where we'll actually be able to spend a little time together. Until then, I am most definitely with you in spirit. Now, getting on with today's program, what I'm going to play today may not be of great interest to all of our fellow saloners, but For those of us who are actively thinking about and working on plans for ways that our descendants can live sustainable and joyous lives, well, this conversation may have some insightful moments for you. What we're about to hear is a conversation that took place on Alan Watts's houseboat one night in February of 1967. And Watts's guests that night were Timothy Leary, Gary Snyder, and Allen Ginsberg. Now, I'll have a little bit more to say about why I selected this particular tape to play right now after we hear it. But thanks to Michael Horowitz, who digitized it, and to Dennis Berry and Bruce Damer for getting it to me for this podcast, we're now going to hear what the utopian dreamers were dreaming about at the very beginning of the period that we now think of as the 60s. And I really do think that this is the beginning of the 60s, because this conversation actually took place just a few weeks after the first human being, where Dr. Leary so famously said, "Turn on, tune in, and drop out." And it was in the flesh of that seeming victory for the hippies that this conversation took place. And among other interesting little tidbits here, and this was new to me, I'd never heard it before, but at the very end of this tape, we'll hear how the good Dr. Leary thought that maybe his famous phrase should be revised. At least that's what he thought at the moment. So anyway, without any further ado, let's join them now and hear what the hippie elders were saying in February of 1967.
This is Alan Watts speaking, and I'm this evening on my ferry boat the host to a fascinating party sponsored by the San Francisco Oracle, which is our new underground paper, far outer than any far out that has yet been seen. And we have here Alan Cohen representing the paper, the Oracle. We have Allen Ginsberg, poet and rabbinic sadhu. We have Timothy Leary, about whom nothing needs to be said, and Gary Snyder, also poet, Zen monk, and old friend of many years.
Everybody is all bugged because they think, one, the dropout thing really doesn't mean anything. It's what you're going to cultivate is a lot of freak-out hippies goofing around and throwing bottles through windows when they flip out on LSD. That's their stereotype vision. Obviously a stereotype.
Sounds like Bolshevik.
Second, no, it's like it's no different from the newspaper vision anyway. I mean, they've got the newspaper vision. And secondly, they're afraid that there'll be some sort of fascist putsch, like is rumored lately. Everybody's going to be arrested, so that the lack of organization among the lack of community, the lack of communicating community among the hippies will lead to some concentration camp situation, or lead, as it has been in Los Angeles recently, to a dispersal of what beginning of the community began.
These are the old menopausal minds. There was a psychiatrist named Adler in San Francisco whose interpretation of the Butte Being was that this is the basis for new fascism. When a leader comes along. And I sensed in the activist movement the cry for a leader. The cry
but they're just as intelligent as you are on this fact. They know about what happened in Russia. That's the reason that they haven't got a big active organization, is because they too are stumped by how do you have a community and a community movement and cooperation within the community to make life more pleasing for everybody, including the end of the Vietnam War. How do you have such a situation organized or disorganized, as long as it's effective, without a fascist leadership? Because they don't want to be that either. They are conscious of the fact that they don't want to be messiahs, political messiahs. At least Savio is particularly, he wants to go out. Yesterday he was weeping, saying he wanted to go out and live in nature.
Beautiful.
So, I mean, he's like basically where we are.
Well, I think that thus far the genius of this kind of underground that we're talking about is that it has no leadership. The Western world has labored for many, many centuries under a monarchical conception of the universe, where God is the boss And political systems and all kinds of law have been based on this model of the universe, that nature is run by a boss. Whereas if you take the Chinese view of the world, which is organic, they would say, for example, that the human body is an organization in which there is no boss. It is a situation of order resulting from mutual interrelationship of all the parts. And what we need to realize is that there can be, shall we say, a movement, a stirring among people, which can be organically designed instead of politically designed. It has no boss.
Yeah, well,
and yet all the parts recognize each other in the same way as the cells of the body all cooperate together.
Well, it's a new social structure.
Yes.
It's a new social structure which follows certain kinds of historically known tribal models.
Exactly, yeah. My historical reading of the situation is that these great monolithic empires that developed in history, Rome, Turkey, so forth, and they always break down when enough people, and it's always the young, the creative, and the minority groups, drop out and go back to a tribal form. And I agree with what I've heard you say in the past, Gary, that the basic unit is tribal. And what I envision is thousands of small groups throughout the United States and Western Europe and eventually the world is dropping out. What happened when Rome fell? What happened when Jerusalem fell? Little groups went off
precisely
together.
what do you mean by drop out then? You haven't dropped out. You dropped out of your job as a psychology teacher in Harvard. Now, what you've dropped into is, one, a highly complicated series of arrangements for lecturing and for putting on the festival.
Well, I'm dropped out of that.
No, but you're not dropped out of the very highly complicated legal constitutional appeals, which you feel a sentimental regard for, as I do. You haven't dropped out of being the financial provider for Millbrook. You haven't dropped out of planning and conducting community organization and participating in it. And that community organization is related to the national community, too, either through the Supreme Court or through the very existence of the dollar that is exchanged for you to pay your lawyers or to take money to pay your lawyers in the theater. So you can't drop out, because you haven't.
Well, let me explain.
And so they think you mean like a drop out, go live on Haight-Ashbury Street and do nothing at all. Even if you can do something like build furniture and sell it or give it away and barter with somebody else.
You have to drop out in a group. You drop out in a small tribal group.
Well, you drop it out one by one, but, like you can join the subculture.
Yeah. Maybe it's a drop out of what?
Gary, I think that you have something to say here, because you, to me, are one of the most fantastically capable dropout people I've ever met. I think that at this point, you should say a word or two about your own experience of how to live on nothing, how to get by in life economically. And this is the nitty-gritty. This is where it really comes down to in many people's minds. Where's the bread going to come from if everybody drops out? Now, you know expertly where it's going to come from, living a life of integrity and not being involved in a commute, this necktie strangle news scene.
Well, this isn't news to anybody, but when 10, 15 years ago, when we dropped out, there wasn't a community. And there wasn't anybody who was going to take care of you at all. You were really completely on your own. What it meant was cutting down on your desires and cutting down on your needs to an absolute minimum. And it also meant don't be a bit fussy about how you work or what you do for a living. That meant doing any kind of work. Strawberry picking, carpenter, laborer, longshore. Well, longshore is hard to get onto, and it paid very well. And shipping out, that also pays very well. But at least in my time, it meant being willing to do any goddamn kind of labor that came your way and not being fussy about it. And it meant cultivating the virtue of patience. The patience of sticking with a shitty job long enough to win the bread that you needed to have some more leisure, which meant more freedom to do more things that you wanted to do. And mastering techniques of all kinds of techniques of living really cheap, like getting free rice off the docks because the loading trucks sometimes fork the rice sacks and spill little piles of rice on the docks. which are usually thrown away. But I had it worked out with some of the guards down on the docks that they would gather 15, 25 pounds of rice for me and also tea. And I'd pick it up once a week off the docks, and then I'd take it around and give it to friends. And this was rice that was going to be thrown away otherwise. There's little techniques like that.
Second-day vegetables from the supermarket.
Yeah, we used to go around at 1 or 2 in the morning around the Safeways and the Piggly Wigglies in Berkeley with a shopping bag and hit the garbage cans out and back. And we'd get Chinese cabbage, broccoli, lots of broccoli, and artichokes that were thrown out because they didn't look sellable anymore. So I never bought any vegetables for the 3 years I was a graduate student at Berkeley. And when I made meat, it was usually horse meat from the pet store because they don't have a law that permits them to sell horse meat for human consumption in California like they do in Oregon.
You make delicious horse meat sukiyaki.
Well, I want to add to this, Gary, that during the time when you were living this way, I visited you on occasion, and you had a little hut way up on the hillside on Homestead Valley in Mill Valley. And I want to say, for the record, that this was one of the most beautiful pads I ever saw. It was sweet and clean, and it had a very, very good smell to the whole thing. And you were living what I consider to be a very noble life. Now, then the question that next arises, if this is the way of being a successful dropout, which I think it is true, can you have a wife and child under such circumstances?
Yeah, I think you can, sure.
What about when the state forces you to send the child to school?
You send it to school.
Oh no, come on. I don't see this as a dropout at all.
I want to finish what I was going to say. That's the way it was 10 years ago. Today, there is a community, a huge community, which when you drop out, when any kid drops out today, he's got a subculture to go fall into. He's got a place to go where there'll be friends and people that will put him up and people that will feed him at least for a while and keep feeding him indefinitely if he moves around from pad to pad.
But that's just stage one. The value of the Lower East Side or of the district in Seattle or the Haight-Ashbury is it provides a first launching pad. Mm-hmm. But that must be seen clearly as a way station. I don't think the Haight-Ashbury district is a place, any city for that matter, is a place where the new tribal
I agree with you.
Is going to live. Not so that when I mean drop out, and I don't want to be misinterpreted, I'm dropping out step by step. Millbrook, by the way, is a tribal community. We're getting closer and closer to the land. We're working out our way of import and export with the planet. We consider ourselves a tribe of mutants, just like all the little tribes of Indians were. We happen to have our little area there, and we have to come to terms with the white men around us. So yes, there's no.
Okay, but now look, your dropout line is fine for all those other people out there. That's what you got to say to them. But I want to hear what you're building. What are you making?
What are we building?
Yeah, what are you building? I want to hear your views on that. Now, like it's agreed, we're dropping out, and there are techniques to do it. Now, what next? Where are we going now? What kind of society
I'm making the prediction that thousands of groups will just look around the fake prop television set of American society and just open one of those doors. And when you open the doors, they don't lead to any room, they lead you out into the Garden of Eden, which is this planet. And then you find yourself a little tribe wandering around. As soon as enough people do this, enough young people do this, it will bring about an incredible change in the consciousness of this country and of the Western world.
Well, that is happening, actually.
Yeah. But
that Garden of Eden is full of old rubber truck tires and tin cans right now.
Parts of it are. Each group that drops out has got to use its 2 billion years of cellular equipment to answer those questions. Hey, how are we going to eat? Oh, there's no more paycheck. There's no more fellowship in the university. How are we going to eat? How are we going to keep warm? How are we going to defend ourselves?
What is very important here is that people learn the techniques which have been forgotten. That they learn new structures and new techniques. Like you just can't go out and grow vegetables, man. You've got to know how to do it. Like we've got to learn to do a lot of things we've forgotten to do.
I agree.
That is very true, Gary. Our educational system in its entirety does nothing to give us any kind of material competence. In other words,
exactly.
We don't learn how to cook, how to make clothes, how to build houses, how to make love, or to do any of the absolutely fundamental things of life. The whole education that we get for our children in school is entirely in terms of abstractions. It trains you to be an insurance salesman or a bureaucrat or some kind of cerebral character.
Within the next 5 years, probably, a modest beginning will be made in subculture institutions of higher learning that will informally begin to exist around the country and will provide this kind of education without being linked to the establishment, to big industry, to government.
Well, it's already happening.
It's already happening. I think that we'll see a big extension of that, employing a lot of potentially beautiful teachers who are unemployed at the moment, like there are gurus who are just waiting to be put to use, and also drawing people who are working in universities with a bad conscience off to join that.
Exactly. See,
but there's a whole new order of technology that is required for this. A whole new science, actually. A whole new physical science is going to emerge for this. Because the boundaries of the old physical science are within the boundaries of the Judeo-Christian and Western imperialist boss sense of the universe that Alan was talking about. In other words, our scientific tradition is caught within the limits of that father figure, Jehovah, or Roman emperor model, which limits our scientific objectivity and actually holds us back from exploring areas of science which can be explored.
Exactly.
So that really, like our new technology goes with this.
Exactly.
It's like the guy in Los Angeles who had a bad trip on LSD and turned himself into the police and wrote, "Please help me," signed, Jehovah.
Beautiful. But that time he caught on, huh?
But here, though, is this thing, you see. We are talking about all this, which is really a rather small movement of people involved in the midst of a fantastic multitude of people who can only continue to survive if automated industry feeds them, clothes them, houses them, and transports them by means of the creation of immense quantities of ersatz material. Fake bread, fake homes, fake clothes, and fake autos. In other words, this thing is going on. This huge, fantastic numbers of people increasing. People think, the population problem, something's going to happen in 5 years from now.
Yeah.
They don't realize it's right on us now. People are coming out of the walls.
You have to start immediately putting the technology underground. I can think of different ways that we can do this symbolically. The solstice, last April 21st, a group of us went out in front of the house in Millbrook, and we took a sledgehammer, and we spent about an hour breaking through the road. And we had this incredible piece of asphalt and rock about 4 inches. And then we said, hey, underneath this planet somewhere, there's dirt. Yeah. And it was really magical. And once you get a little piece taken out, it took about an hour to get one little piece, then you just go underneath it, and it begins to crumble. So that I think that we should start a movement to 1 hour a day or 1 hour a week, take a little chisel and a little hammer and put a little hole in some of this plastic and just see some earth come up and put a seed there. I can foresee, and then put a little ring of mandalic ring of something around it. I can see the highways, and I can see the subways, and I can see the patios and so forth. Suddenly, the highway department come along and say, there's a rose growing in the middle of Highway 101. And then the robot power group will have to send a group of the highway department to kill the rose and put the asphalt down on the gentle, naked skin of the soil. Now, when they do that, we're getting to them. There'll be pictures in the paper, and consciousness is going to change, because we've got to get to people's consciousness. We've got to let people realize what they're doing to the earth.
And that's the area of poetry you're dealing with.
There we go. I'm the poet, and you're the politician. I've told you that for 10 years.
I mean, I know someone now at State who's studying psychology, and he doesn't know whether to drop out or not. He's pulled in 2 directions. I think there are many people like this.
Yes, I think he should drop out, and I want to be absolutely clear on that. And the papers, nobody wants to listen to that simple 2-syllable phrase. It gets jargled and jumbled, and I mean it. Now, everyone has to decide how he drops out and when, and he has to time it gracefully, but that's the goal. Now, I can foresee that you might work for Susan Roebuck for 6 months to get enough money to go to India. But that's part of your dropout. And what I'm doing today now is part of my dropout. I do have responsibilities for contracts, and I don't think that anyone should violate contracts with people that they love.
But look at
a
all
contract with the university, fine, quit tomorrow. Therefore, I have to detach myself slowly. When I was in India 2 years ago...
India, but you know, the university has personal relations also. I mean, they're not in contact with the university, they're in contact with persons.
Yeah.
You can't reject those persons necessarily. Well, you can favor your bodhisattva among those persons.
You can, as Tim says, you can gracefully drop out at one time or another. Which I take to...
I was teaching at Berkeley last week. What do you mean, drop out?
You've got to do your yoga as a college professor. It's part of the thing you're going to have to go through. And after you do that, then you'll shudder and run for the door.
Surely the fact of the matter is that you can do this on a small scale, as an individual, where just a few people are doing this, as they always have done. There have always been a kind of elite minority who dropped out, who were the sages in the mountains.
We're talking a drama now. You're not talking about, anthropological realities. The anthropological reality is that human beings, in their nature, want to be in touch with what's real in themselves and in the universe. And that, for example, the longshoremen with their automation contract in San Francisco, a certain number of them have been laid off for the rest of their lives with full pay. And some of them have been laid off already for 5 years with full pay by their contract. Now, my brother-in-law's a longshoreman. He's been telling me about what's happened to these guys. Most of them are pretty illiterate. A large proportion of them are Negroes. The first thing they all did was get boats and drive around San Francisco Bay because they have all this leisure. Then a lot of them got tired of driving around boats that were just like cars, and they started sailing. Then a few of them started making their own sailboats. They move into and respond to the possibility of challenge. Things become simpler and more complex and more challenging for them. The same is true of hunting. Some guy says, I'm going to go hunting and fishing all the time when I have my leisure, by God. And so he goes hunting all the time. Then he says, I want to do this in a more interesting way, so he takes up bow hunting.
Yeah.
And then the next step is, and this has happened, he says, I'm going to try making my own arrowheads. And he learns how to flake his own arrowheads out. Now, human beings want reality. That's, I think, part of human nature. And television and drinking beer and watching television is what the working man laid off does for the first 2 weeks. But then in the third week, he begins to get bored. And in the fourth week, he wants to do something with his body and with his mind and with his senses. I think that automation in the affluent society, plus psychedelics, plus for some curious reason, a whole catalytic, spiritual change or bend of mind that seems to be taking place in the West today especially, is going to result, can result ultimately in a vast leisure society in which people will voluntarily reduce their number, and because human beings want to do that which is real, simplify their lives. Like the whole problem of consumption and marketing is radically altered if a number of people, a large number of people, voluntarily choose to consume less. And people will voluntarily choose to consume less if their interests are turned in another direction, if what is exciting to them is no longer things but states of mind.
That's true.
Now, what is happening now is that people are becoming interested in states of mind, and things are really substitutes for states of mind. So what I visualize is a very complex and sophisticated cybernetic technology surrounded by thick hedges of trees, somewhere, say, around Chicago, and the rest of the nation a buffalo pasture.
That's very close to what I think.
With a large number of people going around making their own arrowheads because it's fun, but they know better. You know, they know they don't have to make it.
Now, this is interesting. Our utopian visions are coming closer together. I say that the industry should be underground. You say it should be in Chicago. This is,
yes, but that's the same idea.
Yeah.
But, like those who want to be technological engineers will be respected and allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like, you can go out and live close to nature, or you can go back and...
But you won't be allowed to drive a car outside this technological...
But you won't want to.
Right.
You know, like that's the difference, baby. You know, it's not that you won't be allowed to, it's that you won't want to. That's where it's got to be at.
Because it's the same thing when we get down to, say, the fundamental questions of food. More and more one realizes that the mass-produced food is not worth eating. And therefore, in order to delight in things to eat, you go back to the most primitive processes of raising and preparing food, because that has taste in it. And I see that there will be a sort of flip, that as all the possibilities of technology and automation make it possible for everybody to be assured of having the basic necessities of life, they will then say, oh yes, we have all that. Now, let's we can always rely on that, but now in the meantime, while we don't have to work, let's go back to making arrowheads and to raising the most amazing plants.
Yeah. It would be so funny. The thing is that they would all get so good at it that the technology center in Chicago would rust away.
Right.
And forget they needed it even.
That's exactly what's going to happen. The psychedelic dropouts are going to be having so much fun. They're going to be so much obviously
But Tim,
healthier.
do you see any indication among people who are at present really turned on that they are cultivating this kind of material competence? Now, I haven't seen too much of it yet. I went to...
Some of those kids at Big Sur have got it.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
They're learning. Like a few years ago, they used to go down to Big Sur and they didn't know how to camp or how to dig latrines. But like what Martine has been telling me and what I've seen down there lately is that they're getting very sharp about what to gather that's edible, how to get sea salt, what are the edible plants, the edible seaweed. And the revolutionary technological book for this state is A.L. Kroeber's Handbook of the California Indians, which tells you what's good to eat.
That's what I wanted to bring out. But the thing is this, look, so many people I know who...
And also what to use for Tampax, milkweed fluff.
Beautiful.
And diapers made of shredded cedar bark.
Yeah.
The whole thing is all there.
A.L. Kroeber.
Handbook of the California Indians.
Beautiful.
But the thing that is this, I found so many people who, are of the turned-on type. And the circumstances and surroundings under which they live are just plain cruddy. You would think that people who had seen what you can see with the visions of psychedelics would reflect themselves in forms of life and art that would be like Persian miniatures, because obviously Persian miniatures, Moorish arabesques are all reflecting the state of mind of people who are turned on. And they are rich and glorious beyond belief.
Majestic.
Majestic, yeah. Well, now, why doesn't it so occur? It is slowly beginning to happen, because I've noticed that recently all turned-on people are becoming more colorful. They're wearing beads and gorgeous clothes and so on and so forth, and it's gradually coming out because you remember the old beatnik days when everybody was in blue jeans and ponytails and no lipstick and drab and crummy. What? And now something is beginning to happen.
It wasn't quite that bad, but we were mostly concerned with not being consumers then.
Yes, I know. Now I see it beginning to happen. Timothy here, instead of wearing his old, whatever it was that he used to wear, has now got a white tunic on with gold and colorful gimp on it. Gimp? Yes. And it's very beautiful. And he's wearing a necklace and all that kind of thing. And color is at last coming into the scene.
Well, okay. Well, now let's get
back before the Roundheads and before Cromwell.
Yes, it is.
Let's get practical here. I think we're all concerned about the increasing number of people who are dropping out and wondering where to go from there. Now let's come up with some practical suggestions which we might hope could unfold in the next few months.
Okay, there's three categories: wilderness, rural, and urban.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be bush people, farm people, and city people. Bush tribes, farm tribes, and city tribes.
Beautiful. That makes immediate sense to myself.
Let me throw in.
How about beach people?
The word is evil and technology. Somehow they come together. And when there's an increase in technology and technological facility, there's an increase in what we usually call human evil.
I wouldn't agree with that, no. No, there's all kinds of non-evil technologies.
I'd like to ask a clarification about something else.
No, like flint, Neolithic obsidian flaking is technology.
But in our advanced stage, it produces evil stuff.
Yes, but what you mean, I think, is this, that when you go back to the great myths about the origin of evil, actually the Hebrew words which say good and evil, as the knowledge of good and evil being the result of eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge, these words mean advantageous and disadvantageous, and they're words connected with technical skills. And the whole idea is this, which you find reflected in the Taoist philosophy, that the moment you start interfering in the course of nature with a mind that is centered and one-pointed and analyzes everything and breaks it down into bits, the moment you do that, you lose contact with your original know-how, by means of which you now color your eyes and breathe and beat your heart. And for thousands of years, mankind has lost touch with his original intelligence. And he has been absolutely fascinated by this kind of political godlike controlling intelligence where they can go and analyze things all over the place, and he has forgotten to trust his own organism. Now the whole thing that everything is coming to be realized today, not only through people who take psychedelics, but also through many scientists, they're realizing that this linear kind of intelligence cannot keep up with the course of nature. It can only solve trivial problems when the big problems happen too fast to be thought about in that way. And so those of us who are in some way or other, through psychedelics, through meditation, through what have you, are getting back to being able to trust our original intelligence, are suggesting an entirely new course for the development of civilization.
Well, it happens that civilization developed with the emergence of specialization in labor.
Yes.
And the emergence of a class structure. A class structure can't survive or can't put across its principle and expect people to accept it if they believe in themselves. If they believe individually, one by one, that they are in some way godlike or Buddha-like or potentially Illuminati. So that it's almost ingrained in civilization. And Freud said this, civilization as a neurosis, that part of the nature of civilization is that it must put down the potential of every individual development. And this is the difference between that kind of society which we call civilized and that much more ancient kind of society which is still viable and still survives, which we call primitive, in which everybody is potentially a chief, and which everybody, like among the Comanche or the Sioux, everybody in the whole culture was expected to go out and have a vision at one time in his life. In other words, to leave the society, to have some transcendental experience, to have a song and a totem come to him, which he need tell no one ever, and then come back and live with this double knowledge in society.
In other words, through having had his own isolation, his own loneliness, and his own vision, he knows that the game rules of society are fundamentally an illusion.
And then the society not only permits that, the society is built on that.
Is built on that, right.
But everybody has one side of the nature which has been out of it.
That society is strong and viable, which recognizes its own provisionality.
And no one who ever came in contact with the Plains Indians didn't think they were men.
Didn't think what?
Right.
They were men.
Yeah.
Every record of American Indians, from the cavalry, the pioneers, the missionaries, the Spaniards, says every one of these people was men. In fact, I was reading just the other day talking about the Yurok Indians, an early settler up there, an early explorer up there, comment on their fantastic self-confidence. Said every Indian has this fantastic self-confidence. And they laugh at me, he said. They laugh at me and they say, "Aren't you sorry you're not an Indian?" Poor wretched Indians, the fellow said. Well, that is because every one of them has gone out and had this vision experience, has been completely alone with himself and face-to-face with himself, and has contacted powers outside of anything that society could give him. And society expects him to contact powers outside of society in those cultures.
Yes, every healthy culture does. Every healthy culture provides for there being non-joiners. Sannyasi, hermits.
This is the next step.
Every healthy society has to tolerate this.
See, a society like the Comanche or the Sioux demands that everybody go out there and have this vision. And incorporates it and ritualizes it within the culture. Then a society like India, a step more civilized, permits some individuals to have these visions, but doesn't demand it of everyone.
But you have to wonder why some people are more ready to drop out than others. It may be explained by theory of reincarnation. The people that don't want to drop out and can't conceive of living on this planet outside of the prop television studio are just unlucky enough to have been born into this sort of thing, maybe the first or second time. They're still entranced by all of the man-made props. But there's no question that we should, I think we should consider how more and more people who are ready to drop out
if there is a value in being a dropout, that is to say, being an outsider, you can only appreciate and realize this value if there are, in contrast with you, insiders and squares. The two are mutually supportive.
Yeah, if someone said to me, I just can't conceive of dropping out, I can say, well, you're having fun with this go-round in? Fine. I'm sure
yes.
We've all done it many times in the past.
But the two groups, the insiders and the outsiders.
I don't think it's too vague because it doesn't say drop out of what precisely. And what everybody's dealing with is people. It's not dealing with institutions, also dealing with them, but also dealing with people working within them, including the police.
Like you have to be able to, if you're going to talk this way, you have to be able to specifically say to someone in Wichita, Kansas, who says, I'm going to drop out.
Yeah.
What do you advise? How do you advise me to stay living around here in this area, which I like?
Let's be less historical now for a while. Let's be very practical about ways in which people who want to find the tribal way...
Well, this is what I've been telling to kids all over Michigan and Kansas. For example, I've had this question. I tell them, first of all, do you want to live here or do you want to go someplace else?
Good.
All right, they say, I want to stay around where I am. I say, okay, get in touch with the Indian culture here. Find out what was here before. Find out what the mythologies were. Find out what the local deities were. Get all of this out of books. Go and look at your local archaeological sites.
Beautiful.
Pay a reverent visit to the local American Indian tombs and also the tombs of the early settlers. Find out what your original ecology was. Is it short grass prairie? Is it long grass prairie here? Go out and live on the land for a while. Set up a tent and camp out and watch the clouds and watch the water and watch the land and get a sense of what the climate is here. Because since you've been living in a house all your life, you probably don't know what the climate is.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Then decide how you want to make your living here. Do you want to be a farmer or do you want to be a hunter and food gatherer? You start from the ground up. And you can do it in any part of this country today, cities and all. But for this continent, I take it back to the Indians.
Yeah, I agree with you completely.
Find out what the Indians were up to in your own area, whether it's Utah or Kansas.
That is a stroke of cellular revelation and genius, Gary. That's one of the wisest things I've heard anyone say in years. That's exactly how it should be done. I do see the need for transitions, though, and you say that there will be city people as well as country people and mountain people. I would suggest that for the next year or two or three, which are going to be nervous, transitional, mutational years, where things are going to happen very fast, by the way, that the transition could be facilitated if every city set up little meditation rooms and little shrine rooms where the people in transition dropping out can meet and meditate together. It's already happening at the Psychedelic Shop. It's happening in New York. I see no reason, though, why there shouldn't be 10 or 15 or 20 such places in San Francisco.
There already are.
Yeah, I know, but let's encourage that. And, I was just in Seattle, and I was urging the people there. Hundreds of them crowd into coffee shops, and this beautiful energy. They are liberated people, these kids, but they don't know where to go, and they just need... they don't need leadership, but they need, I think, a variety of suggestions from people who have thought about this, giving them the options to move in any
Well, I'd like to see the
different. Just a minute. Yeah. The different meditation rooms can have different styles. One can be Zen, one can be macrobiotic, one can be bhakti chanting, one can be rock and roll psychedelic, one can be lights. If we learn anything from ourselves, we learn that God delights in variety. They've got to meet each other and form these tribal, I would say, reincarnation groups, because the people who are ready to drop out and turn on will come to these centers, and they'll wander around and they'll form natural cellular groups, and they will leave the city. I would suggest as practical step number 2 that the human being in San Francisco be a model. We've all tried different models of summer schools and institutes and research projects and individual dropouts. And psychedelic celebrations and so forth, and the Avalon and Fillmore and so forth. I would say that the human being was a tremendously important thing in the consciousness of San Francisco. And if that thing could happen in every large city in the country. And again, the beautiful thing about the being was it had no leadership, it had no big financing, it would just grow automatically.
Yeah, but we're accused of being leaders. We're trying to, what were we doing up on that platform?
That's a charge that doesn't bother me at all.
There were 50 people up on that platform, and every one of them was a leader. So were the people in the audience. The reason was And nobody came out and said, we are the leaders. And
No, nobody said
because
that.
that's bullshit.
Nobody claims to be there, but I remember sitting up there.
They can say, every time they say you're a leader, you point to Snyder.
Well, now look here.
Yeah.
You see?
I do that anyway.
Yeah, I know, but the press has a leadership complex.
Yeah, they keep calling Gary my disciple.
Oh, they want to find ringleaders.
Can I have you blowing his conch horn?
One of the 4 philosophical questions is who started it. And whenever the police or the press barge into a situation, they want to know who started it. In other words, because they're still thinking about God and the first cause, and they want to know who started, who's in charge, and so on.
Who gets the credit, who gets the blame.
Let's get back to a fundamental thing. I think that what you are really, all of you, are having the courage to say is that the absolutely primary thing is that there be a change of consciousness in the individual, that he escape from the hallucination that he is a separate ego in an alien universe, and that we all come to realize primarily that each one of us is the whole works. That each one of us is what is real and has been real for always and always and always and will ever be. And although the time language may not be appropriate here, but nevertheless we are that. And to the extent that it can be spread around, that's what you and I are. And we lose our anxieties, and we lose our terror of death, and our terror of unimportance, and all that kind of thing. That this is the absolutely essential ingredient, which if we get hold of that point, all the rest will be added unto you, in the sense of seek you first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added to you.
Right. Isn't that what you're saying? I mean, isn't that absolutely basic, that
even if this is only realized in a statistical minority, nevertheless it's immensely powerful.
It affects consciousness.
It affects everybody.
Yeah. I would add to practical step number 2 that more celebrations be set up all over or more beings.
The practical, it just occurred to me, the practical details. The model of it is something like the Mahalila. Like you're asking, how's it going to work? Well, now, the Mahalila is a group of about 3 different families who have sort of pooled their resources, none of which are very great. But they have decided to play together and to work together and to take care of each other. And that means like all of them are doing have ways of getting a small amount of bread which they share. And other people contribute a little money when it comes in. And then they work together on creative projects, like they're working together on a light show right now for a poetry reading that we're going to give. And they consider themselves a kind of extended family or clan. And like when they went to the Bian, they had a banner which said Mahalila, like that was their clan banner.
I saw that,
yeah.
That's the model.
That's the model. And the model for the time is that breaking out of the smaller family organization, we work in slightly larger structures, like clan structures, in which people do work at various jobs and bring in whatever bread they can from various jobs, but they're willing to pool it and share it, and they learn how to work and play together. And then they relate that to a larger sense of the tribe, which is also loose. But for the time being, everybody has to be able from time to time to do some little job. But the reference is, the thing that makes it different is that you don't bring it home to a very tight individual or one monogamous family unit, but you bring it home to a slightly larger unit where the sharing is greater. I think that's where it starts.
No, I think that's very important.
Extended family.
The extended family, I think, is where it starts. And my own particular hobby horse on this is that the extended family leads to matrilineal descent. And when we get matrilineal descent, then we'll have group marriage, and when we have group marriage, we'll have the economy licked. Because with the group marriage, capitalism is doomed, and civilization goes out.
Practical step number 3, which I would like to see.
Go on, Tim.
Is
You really are up to the occasion. You're really up to the occasion. Practical step number 3.
I think we should encourage extended families everywhere.
Really?
Well, it's very practical to encourage extended families because the present model of the family is a hopeless breakdown. Because, first of all, the family is an agrarian culture institution, which is not suited to an urban culture, because all the family consists in is a dormitory, where a wife and children are located, and a husband who engages in a mysterious activity in an office or a factory.
in which neither the wife nor the children have any part nor interest, save that he bring home an abstraction called money. And where there are lots of pretty secretaries, then the scene in which he actually works, exactly. And so they have no relation whatsoever to what he does. And furthermore, the awful thing about the family as it exists at the moment is that the husband and the wife both feel guilty about not bringing up their children properly. And therefore they live for their children instead of living out their own lives and doing their own interesting work, in which the children would automatically become interested as participants and watchers on the side. As it is, they're doing everything. They say, we live, we work, we earn our money for you, darlings. And these poor darlings feel all those things thrown at them and they don't know what to do with it. And then they are sent away to school, shrilled off to school, as Dylan Thomas put it, and to be educated for everything and nothing.
By strangers.
By strangers.
Who are dubious.
Who will teach them all sorts of purely...
moral, spiritual, intellectual, and sexual characteristics.
Right. Abstract formulations and things they'll learn, and the family has no reality. And the greatest institution today in the American family is the babysitter. Someone to just take the children out of our consciousness while we enjoy ourselves.
And the death sitter to take the old people out of it.
And the death sitter, exactly.
And even death has been taken from the people.
Yes.
Everything has.
The courtesy of the mortician. Yes.
A good death.
A good death is no longer possible, practically. So,
I have a four-stage thing. American Indian technologies,
practical now,
meditation centers, group marriage, and periodical gatherings of the tribes.
I don't agree with group marriage. We are tribal. We are a tribal people. Anthill sexuality. Every woman.
Wait a minute. That's what I said.
Every woman is all woman. If you can't find all women in one woman, it's your problem.
I do think it's possible for some of us to have found all women in one woman.
I want to get back at something. Let me get something with him. Infidelity means denying your commitments. Now, if your commitments are within a group marriage, then fidelity is being true within your group marriage. And infidelity is being untrue or dishonest outside of that. Now, there are some cultures in South America in which all forms of marriage are permitted. There are group marriages, polyandrous marriages, polygamous marriages, and monogamous marriages.
By group marriages, just a moment, let's get a question of definition here.
Okay, group marriage is where a number of people, as a group, whatever the number is, announce, a marriage is a social announcement of commitment.
Yeah.
Announce that we will be responsible for the children we produce and for each other.
So in other words, all males and all females in this group can be in mutual intercourse with each other.
Yeah.
But not outside the group.
But not outside the group.
Outside the group.
Well, you make rules to take care of that. You got to bring in.
I'm not making rules. I'm just telling you what the anthropological precedences are for these things.
Yes.
It happens that in this South American culture that the majority of the marriages are monogamous. But it also happens that there are some polyandrous, some polygamous, and a few group ones. And I think that what we can allow is people to combine in whatever combinations they wish.
Oh, I certainly would agree with that.
When people, just as Lao Tzu said, when the great Tao lost, there came talk of duty to man and right conduct. And so when the essential idea of love is lost, there comes talk of fidelity. That actually, the only possible basis for two beings, male and female, to relate to each other is to grant each other total freedom. And say, I don't put any bonds on you, you don't put any bonds on me, because I want you, I love you the way you are. And I want you to be that. The minute you start making contracts and bonds and signing on the dotted line, you are wrecking the whole relationship. And you just have to trust to the fact that human beings should be legally allowed to trust each other and to enter into a fellowship that does not involve a contractual arrangement.
I think we all agree with that.
You know, because if you don't do that, you'll kill it.
In primitive cultures, marriage is not a contractual arrangement, but what it is it's a public announcement.
Yes.
What it amounts to. It's a relationship which is made public.
What was your fourth point, Gary?
Occasional gatherings of the tribes. That wasn't an activity.
Well, it seems to me then...
Say rather than group marriage, extended families. extended cooperation structures, in other words. American Indian Technologies, meditation centers, extended cooperative clan type or extended family type structures with much more permissiveness in the nature of the family structure than is permitted, say, in Judeo-Christian tradition, and gatherings of the larger tribes periodically.
Practical suggestion number 6. I suggest that we have meetings in cities April 21st. I suggest we have, say, national meetings, or one national meeting perhaps June 21st, and that we start moving through Europe to the east so that we would, in September 21st, be on the door between India and China with as many Indians or Westerners or people that we picked up on the way. I think that's the quickest way to end racial prejudice in the war in Vietnam.
Some cultures aren't going to understand this yet.
And I don't think you get more than 20,000 people. And that was done anyway, all the way around there. And that was done anyway by Shankaradeo, and he got stopped at the border of Burma.
But you know,
let him through, but the Chinese wouldn't let him through, and the Indians were upset.
There's a social and historical problem here. One is that California's the only place that's ready for this, probably.
Right. San Francisco is the place.
Yeah. Like you couldn't do this in Japan.
Well, it's already done that. Now let's move it out.
No, but you can't do it yet.
It hasn't done it yet.
A great percentage of the world is going to have to move through the drama of Western culture and technology in some accelerated way before they're ready for this. Like America is the only culture that's in which a number of people have seen through it and are able to go beyond it. Japan isn't ready to, for example. It would be incredibly eccentric to them. Nobody's ready to try it.
I question that. I think that if you look at the spread of American ideology, France is just now starting its super drugstores. You must not fail to realize the authentic, deep American spirit behind this. And I think that if it's taken 15 years for France to accept the super drugstore, why not 6 months to accept the being in San Francisco?
Well, because as any
the way they spread drugs, or Pepsi-Cola or Coca-Cola, was they when Coca-Cola first showed up in the Grand Canal in Venice, or Coca-Cola first showed up in Pakistan, it was considered eccentric. But if Pepsi-Cola can do it, the energy and the cellular collectivity, which started here, can move much more quickly because it's talking to deeper things in the human being than Pepsi-Cola. I think this thing should start moving.
Are so many of these people in Africa and Asia are caught up in the drama of progress.
They want nothing more than to come to America and get a large apartment, and a large car and a big gun.
This is part of the paradox.
We can tell them. I feel the same way about the problem with the American Negro. Does he have to become a middle-class white before he can then go on and leave that? I don't think we have to go through these historical periods. I think it's possible to move it faster.
Well, I hope it's possible to accelerate it.
And
but you can't take it around the world this year or next year.
Yeah.
Like the drama is changing. Like what people are interested in is not things at states of mind. You know, like that's the cultural shift that's taking place.
No, this is a very important statement.
Yeah. Really?
Yes. Yeah.
We've turned a corner. It's a bigger corner than the Reformation, probably.
Yes.
It's a corner of on the order of the change between Paleolithic and Neolithic. And it's like one of the 3 or 4 major turns in the history of man, not just culture, but man.
Right. Now, an enormous number of people go into the heart of New York every day for no other reason than to shop. There are, to a large extent, frustrated women living in these wretched dormitories. Their husbands are working, and the women go in order to get some kind of sense of existence, of being, by buying things. Now, supposing it happens that instead of that they change their state of mind,
right?
Instead of going out, and buying something, they change their state of mind sitting where they are in the first place. Then Bonwit Teller, everything in the middle of town simply collapses. Lawton Taylor, so on. There's no more reason for existence. It's like Market Street in San Francisco, where everything is slowly falling apart because it's so ridiculous to park there and you can't get at the place anyhow.
So where are people going to buy their Ewer tape machines and their non-gross?
Suppose they don't want them.
Pardon me?
Suppose they don't want them.
Well, we all have them.
We'll buy them from
We're transitional figures.
Suppose it's decentralized.
Yeah.
No, like we don't need them. Like I would be happy to hear Larry Bird sing his corn dance and his buffalo dance, and I don't want to tape it. I'll hear it, and that's in my mind for the rest of my life.
Right.
Well, the problem here is that there's a withering away of the state. But advanced electronics.
It's called let the state disintegrate.
Well, the part of
an advanced technology such as we're talking about, unless you can magically transform it into some Buckminster Fuller box, which, each individual tribe can operate and create whatever it needs. Other than that, there's the technology as we know it now. And
well, I think that the technology...
like a large electronic network.
I think that the technology withers away as people learn to do it themselves. Like it's more interesting to do it yourself at home with your friends. Like sit around and blow the buffalo horn and blow the conch horn and then turn on the television.
And then turn on the television.
And not turn on the television.
But that was like conditions that were possible for when the continent held 15 million Indians.
Yeah.
But now the continent holds a great many more.
And that's still what's most interesting.
But
to do what you can do yourself.
the whole problem is reproduction. It's not only the reproduction of the species in a sex
Well, that's arbitrary.
but reproduction, as we are now reproducing what we are saying on tape. Because if, supposing this conversation were very turned on and far out, I don't know whether it is or not, people would say, oh, what a pity that didn't get recorded.
Somebody
See, because it didn't really happen unless it was recorded. And increasingly we are developing all kinds of systems for verifying reality by echoing it.
Well, trained minds remember, and the words of the Buddha were all remembered.
Yeah.
Oral tradition.
And the words of the Buddha came down for 200 years before anybody put it in writing, because people were paying attention to what he said.
And only then did they start embellishing it.
Yeah.
But Krishnamurti would argue that remembering it was already a fallacy.
Well, he's very pure.
Alan said he was a bridge builder, that he wanted to be a bridge builder. Now, that stalled car, if we've all got to be bridge builders in one sense, I think, perhaps. He was stalled in Haight-Ashbury amongst the acid heads, and no one gave him a push. If we're telling the kids they're doing something holy, they have to a certain extent, we have to be a little bit holy. And holiness is giving. And we have to learn to give. The diggers have said that since the being on January the 14th, thousands and thousands of kids who don't really know where they're at, but are attracted because they want to know where they're at, have come to the city. But they come to the city and they don't quite know whether to be defiant. They don't know. They don't know what to be. And unless they can become bridges for themselves, each person a bridge for themselves, so they can show that what they have got is something giving. The message doesn't get across. The car should be pushed.
Exactly. It's not enough to tell them that what they're doing by dropping out is right.
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to get at.
Yes,
yeah.
well, that's very important. It's the point.
We've got to become saints.
Well, we at least
which is not even a silly thing to say.
Right.
It's not. Exactly. It's exactly it. They've got to be told that they're pursuing the holiest road of all.
They have to understand what that means.
Well, there should be, again, if we have these meditation centers in all cities, there would be centers where the Gita would be read, where the ancient sutras would be read, where they would be reminded. This is not teaching.
What we need is personal example all over the place.
Right,
really.
but I would suggest that in these meditation centers there be some program of readings, not in the sense of educating or teaching facts, but just reminding young people and any person who drops out and turns on that they are part of an ancient profession, the only holy profession. The profession has kept the flame going, and it certainly should express itself in pushing that Mercedes.
Do you think it's practical to try to get?
Pardon?
Do you think it's practical to try to get some sort of meditation in the public schools?
No, drop out of the public schools. The public schools cannot be compromised with.
No.
I was wondering if you turn on a bunch of college kids that would be too
No.
get anywhere that way.
Why say you shouldn't compromise with the public schools if you're going to compromise with technology?
We're not compromising with IBM or with General Electric. We're simply saying, as Gary has said, that part of man's karmic heritage is the ability to do incredible things with his hands and his analytic mind. But they should be holy things.
Yeah, it's a question of right occupation and right conduct. It's not like that technology is bad or that schools are bad.
Well, now look here. What are we saying when we say now something is holy? That means you should take a different attitude to what you're doing than if you were, for example, doing it for kicks. Now, there's a curious thing here. I have noticed with Allen Ginsberg that when he chants Hindu sutras, he doesn't do it in a pious way.
Right.
There's a joyousness and there's a feeling of delight to doing this chant that has more zip to it than anything we knew in the past as being holy. Now, when you was doing something holy in the past, if you had to put on a solemn expression of saying, we are doing this, but it hurts, but it's good for us. He's not doing that when he chants that. He's not saying it hurts and therefore it's good for me. He's saying it's good for me because I enjoy it. It's gorgeous. I'm going right in there and I'm going to say all these Om Hare Rama Krishna Rama Hare Ram Hare, etc. You see?
He's turning himself on.
And I told I told some nuns a little while ago where the Mother Superior came and they were all talking about the reform of the liturgy and how the Catholic Church has gotten itself in a mess by translating the Latin liturgy into terrible English, and all the magic has gone out of it. And I said, you should come and listen to Allen Ginsberg chant the sutras, because then you'd know how to celebrate Mass properly. So, when we're talking about something being holy, we've got to be very careful. Yeah. We're saying now, Gary, you were saying, all right, people have got to be saints, and you said, well, that's not just a joke to say this, but it's got to be saints in an entirely new sense, not this masochistic kind of sainthood, whereby I am holy because I hurt. Yeah. And the amount of personal hurt that I've piled up is the measure of my holiness.
Well, that's the Judeo-Christian day, which says that the cross is at the center of the universe.
But what about India, where we do have a giant psychedelic community and many tribal groups and tribal gatherings which serve as a model for our own? What kind of material system is that? And would that be acceptable to Mariana Savia?
Sure, it's acceptable.
So what do you think of Swami Bhaktivedanta plea for the acceptance of Krishna in every direction?
Well, it's a lovely, positive thing to say Krishna.
Yeah.
You know, like Krishna it's a beautiful mythology, and it's a beautiful practice.
Should be encouraged.
Yeah.
He feels it's the one uniting thing. He feels a monopolistic.
Well, the one thing
about that.
Well, I tell you, I think why he feels this is that it is the mantrams, the images of Krishna have in this culture no foul associations. Yeah. The word God is contaminated, so Tillich would say the ground of being instead of God. Anything except saying God. The word, get down on your knees and be humble before your Heavenly Father. That gives everybody the creeps. It's just awful to say something like that, you see, because all these Christian images have horrible associations attached to them. Whereas when somebody comes in from the Orient with a new religion, which hasn't got any of these associations in our minds, all the words are new, all the rites are new, and yet somehow it has feeling in it. And we can get with that, you see, and we can dig that. And it can do something for us that it can't do in Japan. For example, in Japan, when young people hear the Buddhist sutras chanted, they think, ooh, let's hear that thing, because they associate all that with fogeyism. Here in the Buddhist churches, in the Niseis, they can't stand it when the priests chant the sutras in Sino-Japanese language for the oldsters. They want to hear, Buddha loves me, this I know, for the sutra tells me so. You know, they want to look as much as they can like Protestants, because that's exotic to them, you see.
We're writing our new myth, and...
yes, but we all do...
We have to, in our sessions, relive the Christ thing, the Buddha thing, the Krishna thing, but we're creating a new myth.
Right, you are, Tim.
And we won't have saints.
But we do. We do it in our own way. Everybody on his own discovers the immemorial truth which has been handed down, and that's the only way you can get it, because you can't follow the truth as other people have taught it. You can't imitate it. You can only discover it out of your own thing, and by doing your own stuff, you keep repeating the eternal pattern. And this probably is the sort of situation we have.
Well, you think because an egg was thrown at me at Santa Monica...
Oh, I'm not just talking of that egg. I'm talking of what was thrown at you in Laredo.
That worries me not at all.
No, well, that's as it should be.
In game activity, when I wander into the television studio and try to do things if I can bat 50%, 500%, it's incredible. Half things I've done are wrong, mistakes. I'm sorry I did them.
Well, we all
moratorium on pot and LSD a year ago was ridiculous. I shouldn't have done that.
No, I know. Well, we all make fools of ourselves occasionally. Good God.
I make a blunder. At least 1 or 2 times I come to bat. These celebrations were a mistake. The first 4 were great. They were spontaneous religious outbursts. But then it became a success. And people said, yes, you got to keep them going. You got to take it around the country and so forth. That was a mistake. It was a mistake to make it commercial, a mistake to have it in a theater, a mistake to charge admission, a mistake to keep a static form going. And we've dropped out of it.
Well, what are you going to do with the celebration?
It was beautiful, though. The first 4 celebrations were...
well, have you any way of finding a ritual for celebration, which, or are you making use of the established rituals or the historical knowledge that's been coming out lately on ritual to make a celebration which is like really communal and beautiful? Or do you want to just...
in San Francisco was
I think that
high point.
Yes.
And every time I've talked since that being, I said, listen, we're dropping out of the theater celebrations. Goodbye show business.
Robert Oppenheimer is reported to have said quite recently that obviously the world is going to hell, and the only way that it could be stopped was not to try to prevent it from happening.
That's pretty far out.
In other words, when there is a game going on,
the atomic bomb.
when there is a game going on that's on a collision course, and that this game obviously is going to lead to total destruction, the only way of getting people out of a bad game is to indicate that the game is no longer interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. See, we've left this game, and it bores us. And we've got something going on over here, which is where it's at, you know?
That's the point.
And it's where it's at, and everybody who's playing this game, you know, we're in that plane going, yeah, on the mark, you know? And suddenly they realize that that's not where it's at. Something people are doing over on the other side. And they go, what's going on there? Let's go out to Haight-Ashbury and see what's happening over there, because maybe something's happening.
Instead of, really, Tim, instead of the emphasis on the dropping out, I think in a sense it's more to the point to say there's something else going on.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't sound alliteratively correct, though. Oh. It's an intern on this. He's got to, unless his language is interpreted in a way which is understandable and acceptable.
Well, that's a matter of finding a euphonious formula.
If it had been tune on, drop out, tune in.
But he really means drop out, he keeps saying, and then finally we just bring the transistors back in all the time.
People like Mario Savio are offended by the word drop out because it offends their bodhisattva feeling of compassion.
Yeah, very definitely.
Compassion.
And because it's negative rather than positive in its overtones, as the last of the 3. The last of the 3 should be...
Well, now look here, Tim, at that thing in Santa Monica, you made 2 points. One was, A, you can't stay high all the time, because when you finally come down from the high, you realize that the ordinary state of consciousness is one with the high state. This, to me, has been the most fantastic thing in all my LSD experiences, that the moment I come down is the critical moment of the whole experience. I suddenly realize that this everyday world around me is exactly the same thing as the world of the beatific vision.
Right.
Now, then, how do you integrate that realization with the dropout?
All right, we'll change the slogan. See, I'm completely with Mark McLuhan. Everything I say is just a probe. I'm trying to get people to...
yes, I get that. I do the same thing.
Seattle, we were banned from Seattle, and I went up there and talked about menopausal mentality and drop out, and all the cocktail parties, and what does it mean, drop out, menopausal mentality, what does it mean, drop out? I would agree to change the slogan to drop out, turn on, drop in.
You're listening to the Psychedelic Salon, where people are changing their lives one thought at a time.
And there it is, in Timothy Leary's own voice, his new and revised call to arms: drop out, turn on, drop in. And unless I miss my guess, that is exactly what you and I are doing right this very minute. Because unless you've already dropped out and turned on, and I don't mean turn on by taking something, I'm talking about turning on your mind and taking charge of running it yourself. So we've dropped out of our emotional attachments to the madness of the default world, even though we still have to live among those who are still trapped in its deadly embrace. But we've dropped out of our attachments to a life of conspicuous consumption and turned on our minds to the wonderful possibilities of life. And now we're dropping into the salon and to dozens of other podcasts like KMO's Sea Realm and the Dope Fiends Cannabis Podcast Network of podcasts. And we're turning on to our friends in cyberspace and dropping in, if we're lucky, to one or two members of the tribe who actually live nearby. But whether you get together with the tribe in person or only through the net, my personal feeling is that it's really important right now to join your voice in conversation with others in the psychedelic community and to do some serious talking about the future. After all, who is better situated to formulate plans for the future of our species than us people who are actually interested in the continuing evolution of human consciousness? My personal hunch is that this time civilization is going to spring from the bottom up and not the top down. As my character Will says in the Genesis generation, like you, I have no clear idea of what is coming. Possibilities range from a complete collapse of civilization to a gradual disintegration and reorganization, much as what took place in the fall of the Roman Empire. But no matter what happens within that overly broad range, the one thing that we can count on is the strength of the psychedelic community to hold our species together, not unlike mycelium in a forest. And it seems that thoughts like that have been occurring to us psychonauts for a long time now. In fact, my first thought on hearing the conversation between Watts, Leary, and the others just now was that it could have been held last night, even though it actually took place over 40 years ago. As my dear sainted mother sometimes said, everything's changed, but nothing's different. Now, one of the reasons I selected this tape to play today is because their conversation about how empires seem to fade away when the young, the creative, and other minority groups drop out and go back to a tribal form. And, by the way, Kevin, you and your wonderful friends are doing a perfect job of that, creating a civilization of earth-loving, fun-loving, high-tech beings who are wonderfully human in every respect. And I actually know of quite a few other little clans like this that are scattered all over the planet. You would never know about them from outward appearances, but they seem to be springing up everywhere. You know, people starting small gardens, paying more attention to the night sky, people taking responsibility for raising and educating their own children, not just, pushing them off on some corporate daycare place. They don't have big houses or flashy cars, and they often are living on the financial edge, but their lives are considerably more fulfilling and joyous than the way I spent almost all of my adult life, which was commuting to a job I didn't like and still struggling to break even to pay the bills for stuff I didn't get to use every month. Now there are options to that way of life, but unfortunately it often takes a trauma of some kind to force us to move away from a tolerable status quo. But fortunately, if you've made some contacts with the psychedelic community over the years, you now have a few safety nets. You probably noticed that Gary Snyder said, and this was over 40 years ago, remember, but he said that when somebody drops out today, there's a subculture to catch them, unlike in the late 50s. Now, this subculture may not be as visible today as it was during the hippie years, but it's still there, just under the surface all over the world. And I guess it's called a tribe by most of us, and I guess that's probably more of a feeling than an actual entity. But a lot of people I know sure do think it's real. Now, if I may express just a little criticism of their conversation, however, it would be that there was not much talk of the feminine there. It was definitely an old boys club back then, and I think that was one of the weaknesses of the hippie movement, if there was one, and there were probably many. Unfortunately for me, I was a flower child who slept through the hippie age. I was in Vietnam doing my military duty during those days. Anyway, I guess I better sign off here, but there are still two quick things that I need to cover. And the first one is to repeat what I said a while back about being careful about anyone who contacts you through Facebook. As I said when I first set up an account there, some of my friends are there from, as far back as high school, and others are former business associates, but by far the majority of my Facebook friends are fellow saloners who I've never met in person. So, first of all, I hope that you just don't contact everybody on my friends list and ask them to be your friend or whatever, because, first of all, I can't vouch for everyone, and secondly, I think it's kind of rude. But now there's a further concern that comes to me from a very close friend of mine who also happens to be a Facebook friend. And here's what she had to say. I want to check in with you about something that has transpired since I joined the Psychedelic Salon Facebook group. Almost immediately, I started getting friend invites from a handful of men I did not know. I'm not quick to get paranoid, but there was an odd similarity shared by most of them that made me think that something might be a little off. They were all male, married, and about the same age, in their 30s. They did not fit the typical profile of the type of guy who randomly hits on girls on the internet to build his virtual harem. I can't put my finger on it, but something made me wonder if some of them might be law enforcement guys. When I checked out their profiles, something seemed a little weird, like they didn't quite fit in with the community of people I'm used to seeing. Their profiles didn't contain much information, and they were really alike, mostly from Texas and New Jersey. Has anyone else reported a similar experience? I mention it just in case you want to put a little reminder out there to remind folks to be extremely careful about what they discuss with strangers online, just in case the non-others might be paying attention too. Well, until I received this email, I just kind of assumed that I was the only one who was constantly being pinged by these knuckle-draggers from the DEA and other goon squads. It's really laughable, some of the email I get. These guys keep sending me emails claiming they are desperate to find a drug connection because their children are dying and things like that. But their attempts are so clumsy that it's quite obvious that the only thing they know about substances is the misinformation the government puts out. So I just ignore all of them, and you should do the same. As I said early on in these podcasts, when I decided to become a more or less public spokesperson for psychedelic medicines, I had to consciously break off all of my connections with the underground. I gave my entire stash away and made a point of not knowing where to find any illegal substances. Now, I may leave the jurisdiction of the United States once in a while and partake in a sacred ceremony, but here inside the borders of the empire, I only talk about these things. So I recommend that you follow my method for dealing with strangers, and that is, whenever someone asks me if I know where to find an illegal substance, I immediately assume that she or he is a government informant or agent of some kind, and from then on out, I never trust them again. I simply don't give second chances because, hey, if they aren't a narc, then they're certainly too loose-lipped and immature to be trusted anyway. So, end of lecture. Now, let's get on with a more pleasant topic on which to close today's program, and it's about synchronicities. You know, seems like every week somebody tells me about how one or more synchronicities seem to be taking place in their lives, and the same is true for me. So I thought I would pick out one of them to pass along here just to give you a flavor of things that you might want to be looking for in your own life. This comes from fellow saloner Matt Meyerhead, who writes in part, I wanted to relate to you an amazing experience that happened to me while listening to the podcast of your book, The Genesis Generation. I settled down, as I often have, to listen to your delicious podcast and was amazed to hear you quote from a page of Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer. I'm an artist, Lorenzo. That evening had been a busy one. I had just returned from hanging a series of my paintings at a local coffee shop. The theme of the show had to do with the written word and insects and typewriters. The images are all of typewriters that are transforming in different ways. They include text, and here is the amazing thing. I had copied text almost at random, sentences that I found to be beautiful or interesting, and screen printed into my paintings. The page you read included 2 of the quotes I had chosen. We must search for fragments, splinters, and let the dead eat the dead. I'm a huge Henry Miller fan. Ford knows he's popular, but the odds of you quoting that passage right before I'd hung my show I thought were staggering. Well, I hope you enjoy the synchronicity. And then he gives me links to a gallery of images from his show and from a performance by his girlfriend who also inspired those quotes. And I'll put those links in our program notes for this podcast. And then he concludes by saying, "And if you send me an address, I will send you one of the paintings which contain the quotes." Well, thank you so very much for sending that story along, Matt. And thank you also for your kind offer to send one of the paintings. That's overly generous. And by the way, I did go out and take a look at them. It is pretty amazing synchronicity. But it also gives me the chance to let the rest of our fellow saloners know that as much as I appreciate all of your kind offers to send me a gift of your work, I must decline, but with deep gratitude. And my reason is that I'm working quite diligently to reduce my physical possessions to what I can carry in my car. I want to be as light on my feet for the next few years as possible, so instead of acquiring even small possessions, I'm doing the opposite and offloading all of my stuff to my children, who are much more planted than I am at the present. So, Matt and all of you other graphic artists and musicians, thank you ever so much for your kind offers. But for now, I must ask you to pass your work along to somebody who already has a place where it can be enjoyed. And I'll feel good in knowing that in my own small way, somebody else's life is enhanced by your art. Well, I guess that'll do it for now. And so I'll close today's podcast again by reminding you that this and all of the podcasts from the Psychedelic Salon are freely available for you to use in your own audio projects under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 3.0 license. And if you have any questions about that, just click the Creative Commons link at the bottom of the Psychedelic Salon webpage, which you can find at psychedelicsalon.org. And for now, this is Lorenzo signing off from Cyberdelic Space. Be well, my friends.